Hi, my name is Sanjay. Thanks for continuing on this journey, which is leadership in a crisis. As you're aware, I'm a leader, coach, mentor, and a leadership trainer. Today, let me tell you about a crisis. Imagine that you are a CEO of a large pharmaceutical company. Going is fine, and suddenly you get the news that 7 people have died after taking one of your most popular drugs. It was an over-the-counter drug used primarily to treat headaches, a drug called Tylenol. Tylenol contributed 17% of Johnson & Johnson's revenues. A madcap injected cyanide into some of the capsules. People who took these died. 7 people died from taking a medication which was safe. This was a crisis that confronted the gentleman you're going to see on the screens now. His name is James Burke. He was the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And he got the news that 7 people died after taking Tylenol injected with cyanide. This brings me to the second trait that you require for leadership during a crisis. Can you communicate clearly and convince people about your course of action? Do you believe in honest, straightforward communication that would increase the trust factor that we talked about in my last video? James Burke did exactly that, and let's learn from him. Now, James Burke had many choices on how to communicate with everyone. The major stakeholders were the government, the safety regulators, law, and most importantly, the employees and the consumers. James Burke could have said it was not his fault. James Burke could have said it is not the company's fault. James Burke could have talked about the safety practices in Johnson & Johnson. James Burke could have put a spin on the entire thing, but he chose not to do any of them. In his first televised press conference, he reinforced a key message. He said, the lives of our consumer is more important than any other criterion. His most powerful messages was that consumer and the consumer safety is very important. Remember, the most persuasive word in the English dictionary is, probably you guessed it, because. James Burke did not just communicate. He spent a lot of time explaining reasons. He tried to explain why he chose to do what he chose to do. He took the unprecedented measure of recalling 31 million capsules of Tylenol. It cost the company $100 million. A lot of people were not very happy with that. Shareholders were livid. Wall Street was up in arms. The press had a field day. But James Burke kept coming back to the central point that the lives and the safety of the consumer is the most important criteria. He told this over and over again, patiently ran through the chronology of events, explained why he acted the way he did. He went before the Senate, he went before the press. He was called by multiple regulators to ask about safety practices. He answered questions honestly and patiently. In all the answers, it was very clear that he was a man in charge who knew what he was doing. The American public and the stakeholders started seeing that this was a man who was in command and who knew what he was doing. So quiet confidence that came from good, honest, straightforward communication won the day. Did he earn the trust immediately? No. Did he earn their trust over many months? Yes. Tylenol was written off by the press. But Johnson & Johnson reintroduced Tylenol in a tamper-proof case, and it quickly regained the position it had before. And Johnson & Johnson was seen as some company that put the lives of its consumers before the shareholders' interests. This helped Johnson & Johnson in the long run, and it cemented the position of James Burke as somebody who had handled this crisis effectively. This is now a case study in most business schools. What are some of the lessons that you should learn? You would need to take hard measures, but if it is an honest effort, the reasons are clear, spend time explaining reasons to your team. It is not enough to talk about the tough measure. Also talk to them about why you had to take these tough measures. Remember, your teams are scared and demotivated. If you come up with something that the rest of the public feel is spin, is manipulative, they will never trust you as a leader. Look at simple, honest, straightforward messages. Spend time explaining the reasons why you took these messages. Lastly, most important, over communicate, never under communicate. I'm looking forward to joining you again in my next video, where I'll again talk about an extraordinary leader and the crisis that his company faced.